Okay, so you've just arrived in Shanghai in 1928,
Right.
October, roughly.
Yeah, fall of 28.
And
Yeah.
what happened then?
Well, then my folks decided they're going to send me to this British boarding school in Chefoo. And so, I don't know, I guess we weren't in Shanghai too long, maybe a week or two, and then we took this coastal ship up to North China to where Chefoo was located, and I don't think my father went along. I think he went straight up to the interior China.
Okay.
Oh, when we were in Jersey City, my sister Joan was born.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
she came on the...
In January of 1928, and she was the only one of my siblings that was born in the States.
Got it.
All the rest were born in China,
Okay.
and 3 of them died in China of dysentery.
So that was Gladys.
Gladys and Winifred, and then before I was 3 years before I was born, the oldest one, my brother Stanley.
And they all died of dysentery in China.
Yeah.
And were there remains left in China?
Well, Pearl and Gladys and Winifred were buried in Guyuan.
Which is where remains would still be.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, they were. I mean, unless somebody.
And what about Stanley?
He was. There was a mountain resort, sort of near Xi'an there, and that's where. Excuse me. Where he died, and I think he was buried up there. I never saw his grave.
Near Xi'an.
Yeah, 50 miles or whatever from there, something like that.
So from Shanghai, then you went with your mother
and
up to
and 2 sisters.
And 2 sisters to
Chefoo.
Chefoo.
Yeah,
And
which is about 200 miles north up the coast of China.
And how old were you right now?
8.
8. And how old was Pearl?
She was. She would be just about 2.
2. And how old was Joan? She was just an infant.
Yeah, an infant, not even 1 year old.
Okay, and then your father, Herman, made his way to Guyuan.
Well, wherever he went, yeah, I suppose. I guess.
Okay. And so then you got to Chefoo.
Yeah.
And pick up the story there.
Well, then they enrolled me in it was a boarding school divided in 3 parts. There was the what they call the prep school, which was for kids from 6 to 10, and then there was the girls. The girls and the boys, they went separate ways when they were 10 years old. The girls' school and then the boys' school. So they enrolled me in what they call was the prep school.
For boys.
Boys and girls.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, until you were 10 years old. And it was a beautiful location right on the overlooking the bay there in Chefoo, and they my mother, she stayed there with me and the kids until I guess February or so for 3-4 months, and then it was time for I don't know if my father came to get her or.
And then she left.
She left
with your 2 sisters.
Yeah.
And you were left in Chefoo.
And I was left in Chefoo.
And how did you feel about that?
Very homesick.
Really?
Yeah. And I got over it quick, but I didn't. That would be the like early in 1929 when they left, and I didn't see them again until late in 1931.
Wow.
Because it was, once you got at the end of the railroad, like, when we left, your transportation was a mule cart again. So, so they had, in that school, they had the longest vacation in the wintertime, 2 months in the wintertime, instead of the summer because of the kids that came from all over China. and there were, with all the cholera and dysentery prevalent, so it was better to travel in the wintertime. So they had the 2-month vacation in the wintertime.
So,
But where my folks lived, it took too long, so I wouldn't be able to make it in a round trip in the 2 months there.
wow.
Or if I did, I'd have to turn around right away as soon as I got there.
So what did you do during those 2 months then, when all the other kids
I
got?
stayed there with somebody, with a few others that were in the same boat as me.
And was that disappointing to you?
Yeah, very much so. And boy, and you can look out over there from the school there in the bay there, and you see these ships leave, and oh boy, I wish I was on one of them. So, I guess it carried over with me. I never wanted to be stuck in a place again. So.
That's why you're a little bit of a gypsy then, huh?
Yeah, but not anymore. I have no desire to travel now.
Well, talk about Chefoo a little bit. Was that a strict school? Was it a good school? Good friends?
Yeah, it was all right. I don't know. Well, I suppose you would call it strict, but I mean, in those days, it didn't make me. I was 8 years old. It didn't make much difference.
Did you get in trouble?
No, very little trouble. Yeah.
And was it hard?
Well, I did all right.
Okay.
I did all right. I don't know, near the top of my class.
Really?
Well,
okay.
Yeah, but then later on, like when I was in high school, then.
It turned around, huh?
Well, I don't know. I don't recall studying any less, or I don't know. I just. But eventually, it worked out okay, though.
Yeah. So you were there until 1931, then, before you had a chance to go see your parents, or did they come to see you?
Then late in 1931, then they came. They came down to Chefoo, and they spent the winter there.
And were you excited when they came?
Oh, of course, yeah. But my mother, she, well, I guess my dad too, but they thought I looked very emaciated. So, how was I to know one way or the other? So.
So did they start fattening you up then?
I guess.
Okay. So they stayed there for the winter. Then what happened?
Then my father bought a car down there, and from somebody. He bought an old Chevy down there for somebody, and then they drove out of Chefoo back to northwest China.
On the mule paths.
They had some roads, especially near the coast. They weren't paved. I mean, they were dirt, but some of them, they weren't bad for the most part. But when you got further up between Xi'an and Guyuan, then it was a different story. They were lousy roads.
So
terrible.
they left again in 1932 then.
Yeah, the first part of 32.
And continued to leave you in Chefoo.
And it left me there, yeah. Well, by that time I was in the boys' schools. I was no longer in the prep school. So, and they had the English system there where, when you got out of the prep school, then you went in, instead of like calling here the fourth grade or fifth grade, they said the second form. And second form, third form, 4, 5, 5A, 5B, 6, and that was it. You're out.
So 6 was equivalent to our 12th grade then.
Yeah. So I was 2 days before my 16th birthday. I was finished. But that's young for on the average. But we didn't have the distractions that kids have here. So.
Did you see your parents in between?
Yeah. Well, then in 1932, that winter vacation, then I went with the other kids there up to to Tientsin by boat, and then from there to Peking, and then train down to Honan, and there I met my father there. He got another car there, and then from there to Xi'an, and then to Guyuan, and I was there I think 2 weeks, and it was time to come back.
Wow.
Yeah.
And all that was in his car?
Well,
the travel was...
no, we had to start out with a ship, and then no, I didn't get to see him until we were close to Xi'an. The train still hadn't got to Xi'an. It was got 80 or 90 miles from there, but then after that, then I saw my folks every year. So, but then in 30, that one. Then the winter of 34. The winter of 34, they came down to. They came down to Chefoo, and then we spent the winter vacation in Shanghai. Winter, December, and January. December 34 and January 35, we were in Shanghai that winter.
So Frank, I want to do just a quick recap of everything you've said. You were born in 1920. You had, unfortunately, 2 siblings passed away in 1925. Pearl was born in 1926. You returned to the States in 1927. Joan was born in 1928. Also, later in 1928, you returned to China.
Right.
And at that point, you went to Chefoo. Your mother stayed there for a while, but then later she went.
She stayed there over the winter.
Over the winter, and then went to Guyuan with Joan and Pearl.
Right.
And you didn't really see your parents until about 1931.
Yeah.
So it was a long time.
Yeah, almost 3 years. Yeah.
So, and we talked about how it was hard for you to go back in the wintertime for the holidays like the other students, but after a while, the transportation infrastructure in China was improving.
That's right.
And by 1934, there was a new railroad that went all the way to Xi'an, which reduced your travel time by...
And by that time, they had moved from Guyuan to Xi'an, too. My parents.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And is that when your dad had become the business manager?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly if it was in 1933 or 34 that they transferred him from Guyuan back to Xi'an.
But right around that time, when you went home for the holiday, it was a lot easier to get back to Xi'an by train.
A lot easier. Yeah.
No more huge
mule
carts, rickshaws.
Yeah.
Okay, so on these holiday visits, or when you would go back, I want to pick up there. Maybe in 1934 was one of those events in the winter of late 34. Your parents came to see you in Chefoo.
And then we went from there to Shanghai. We spent the winter in Shanghai that winter. Whether they needed medical or dental work or what, but they decided to. We spent the winter at the mission headquarters in Shanghai. So.
And do you have memories of living in Shanghai?
Oh yeah. Well, it's like a modern city. It was. In fact, they had besides the Chinese city, there was the international settlement. It was like a European town, and the French, they had their own section too. But it was like a modern city. Yeah.
Okay, not too much different from Chicago.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then so that was in late 34. You went there to Shanghai.
For the winter. Yeah.
For the winter. Okay, and so pick up the story from that winter and tell us about the events that ensued over the next few months after that.
So then, the first part of February, about 80 80 children. We gathered there with our escorts to go back to school.
In meantime, your parents were going to stay in Shanghai
Well,
for
they
a
were
while.
going to take their train or something, a different route back up to inland China.
I see.
Yeah. So, no, they didn't have to go to Chefoo to get back to where they wanted to go.
So you boarded a boat to go to
Yeah,
Chefoo.
the SS Tungchow.
Tungchow. Okay.
Tungchow was the British flag, British coastal ship that plied the China coast between Hong Kong, Shanghai, and North China. It stopped in Qingdao and Chefoo and then Tianjin. Yeah. So we're February 3rd, February 5th, I've forgotten exactly what date. We left Shanghai and we went down the small river there, maybe 15 miles, and you hit the estuary of the Yangtze River, and there was after a couple hours, then you're out in the ocean, open ocean there. And around 6 o'clock in the evening, all of a sudden there was gunfire.
And this was on the very first day.
The first day, yeah. A few hours out of Shanghai, yeah. And
Where were you on the boat?
huh?
Where were you on the boat at
I
this
was
time?
up on upper deck there. I was walking around with somebody, I guess, waiting for the evening meal, and then there was a lot of scurrying around and running around, and another person and I, we went up and a little higher up there, and we hid for a while, and then it was quiet then, and so after about a half an hour, we thought, well, we better go down and see what's happening. So we went down and we went into the first class dining saloon there.
Which is where your section was, right?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And everybody's standing around there with their hands up.
Except you guys.
Yeah, well, we put ours up pretty soon, quickly too. And well, they were talking Chinese, but we didn't know what was going on.
Did they look mean and angry?
Well, not particularly, but so then after a while they let us go to our rooms there, and we had to stay there. We couldn't. I don't know. I think they delivered our food to us, whatever it was, for the next couple of days. And in the meantime, they had, of course, they sealed the radios. They wouldn't let anybody, the radio operators, transmit at all to the outside. So nobody knew what happened to their ship. When it became overdue there in Qingdao, then hey, what's happened? What happened to this thing? If we'd had a collision or something like that, then they'd know. But immediately, I guess they suspected it was pirates. So and they painted a couple of white stripes around the black smokestack to make it look like a Japanese ship, and they changed the name up there to some kind of a Maru, and well, they wouldn't let us out. We had to stay in our quarters there, so that was about 3 or 4 days, and in the meantime it was getting warmer, so we assumed, hey, we must be going south.
Did you have a window that you could look out of?
Yeah, we had a porthole, yeah. That we could do, but if you're out in the open sea, there's nothing, there was no land visible.
Right.
And I guess they try to stay out of the regular shipping lanes. So then one day afternoon there, we were looked out, we were close to a beach there, and all of a sudden we were able to go out, and here they'd taken a rowboat to go ashore. They took a couple of hostages with them, and the only thing is they put a couple of holes in the lifeboat so they couldn't get back, the hostages, and so we had to send another boat in for them, and And they get on the radio and hear the British fleet and the U.S. fleet and the Japanese navies are all looking for this ship. So we were about 50 miles from Hong Kong then.
And that's when they decided to bail off then,
Yeah,
right?
well, there was a notorious pirate hangout down there. Two of them right together, Bias Bay and Honghai Bay, and this was Honghai Bay that they. Now the story was that they paid a lot of money for the information that the ship was transporting several $1 million in gold bullion up to North China, and apparently it was misinformation. All they got was a bunch of poor school kids that had virtually no money. So.
Did they try and shake the kids down for money?
Well, they took everything we had, but I only had a couple of Chinese dollars. So.
Now, who was on the boat? Were both Joan and Pearl?
Yeah, and that was the first time that Pearl and Joan were away from their parents.
And their first time away from the parents, they get kidnapped.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And were you with them the whole time?
No, I was in a separate section there.
Why was that?
Well, we had different. They had the girls in one section and the boys in a different section there. So.
Okay. Did you see them occasionally?
I think I saw them once.
Really?
That was all. Yeah, there was no visiting. So. But they did. The pirates did. They opened a lot of crates of oranges there, and they flooded us with oranges. So I guess I got my money's worth in oranges. What I lost.
And so they must have been fairly decent or kind.
Yeah, they weren't. But there was the ship. Most of those coastal ships, they had Russian guards. There were a lot of Russians in China that fled the communist revolution. So there were a lot of Russians living in China, and they hired some of them as guards. And one of them I know was, at least one or maybe two were killed, at least one anyway. And one of the British officers, I think an engineer, I think he was wounded, I think.
Were you aware of all that at the time, or did you?
Well, we heard that, yeah, we knew that about that, yeah.
So now you're near Hong Kong, and the British Navy, the U.S. Navy, the Japanese Navy have found you out. And
they'd all been looking for us, but they'd been. In fact, there were planes that flew over a couple of times, and they saw the white bands around the smokestack, and they figured, oh, this it's not the ship we're looking for, and they were able to get low enough, and they saw Toa Maru or something like that. So, well, this is not the ship we're looking for.
How did they end up finding you then?
So then we were able to get on the radio then, as soon as the pirates.
Oh, because the pirates left.
Yeah, when they left there, yeah. And so then when we got our hostages back from the beach there, then we were only about 50 miles from Hong Kong, so here we are. And so then the British Navy came out and escorted us in, and we were in Hong Kong for 2 or 3 days and treated royally, and
where were your parents? They were on their.
They were still in Shanghai.
And they must have been frantic at this point.
I guess them and a few hundred other parents were frantic. Yeah.
So then, after a couple days in Hong Kong, then what happened?
Well, then went back to Shanghai.
And so you were treated pretty, like you said, royally.
Oh yeah.
Like how so? Like.
Well, I know they took us to this one fancy country club in Hong Kong, on Repulse Bay. I remember, and our stories were in the papers all over the world, so.
Including in the New York Times.
Including the New York Times, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so then, how did you get back? I assume you went back to Shanghai.
Back to Shanghai.
And how did
we were there. We were in Shanghai for another few days, and then from there we went to to the school. So we were 2 weeks late.
On the same boat, or
Yeah, same ship.
same
yeah.
ship the whole way?
Yep.
Okay, just with a detour.
Huh?
Just with a detour.
Just with a detour, yeah. So we got 2 weeks extra vacation.
Which you didn't complain about.
None of us complained.
So that was in February of 1935.
Right.
And I know you completed your studies in Chefoo in 1936.
Right.
Anything between 1935 and 36 graduation that sticks out in your mind as memorable?
No,
Just another school year?
yeah, well then, that winter of 35, then, winter vacation, then we went to Xi'an. Pearl and Joan and I.
Winter of
35.
35, 36, you mean?
The winter, yeah, December of 35.
Okay.
Yeah.
You went
and
to Xi'an.
it took like, 3-4 days then.
And you had graduated at this.
No, I hadn't graduated.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
So-
just before graduation.
Yeah, so then in July of 36 it was graduation, if you want to call it that. But in those days we got our exams from Oxford, the high school exam, and then we didn't get the, but we were finished, so we didn't get the results until a couple of months later. But by that time, I already left. My mother came down for my, if you want to call it a graduation. But, yeah, it was 2 days before my 16th birthday.
In 1936.
36, yeah.
Okay. And then she came down
So we went to Xi'an then.
by train.
By train, yeah. They're in the regular way, and then and then when Pearl and Joan, when they came home for the winter vacation that year of 36 to Xi'an.
Oh, that's right. You went back to Xi'an with just your mother and,
Yeah,
left Joan and Pearl at the
Back to the
Chefoo.
school, yeah. And so then on December the 12th, remember December 12th was double 12 month, 12th day. Chiang Kai-shek was the president. He was kidnapped up there in Xi'an. And well, China had a lot of warlords. Like the governor, he might have not. Here we got a National Guard, I guess, in the different states, but there they had almost their own armies. A lot of these guys. So, and they were also trying to fight the communists, who were ensconced up there about 200 miles north of Xi'an, in the Yan'an, in Shenxi province. But so they kidnapped Chiang Kai-shek there, and
Who's they? The communists or another
no,
warlord?
the warlord there, and the other one that was supposed to be in charge of the federal troops. Yeah, Zhang Shuiliang, I remember. He had 2 American pilots that flew, that piloted his own private plane there, but who lived with one of the missionaries there. But, so they got the American food and whatnot. But, so then on Christmas Eve,
of 1936. Okay.
2 weeks later, then he was released there. He was released there, but then they still were arguing back and forth, and the warlord and the Zhang Shuiliang, in charge of the federal troops, they wanted them to get together with the communists and quit fighting the communists and concentrate all their efforts on fighting the Japanese. But the war against Japan hadn't started yet. Well, earlier, like in '32, Japan invaded northeastern China and took the three northeastern provinces, namely which were called Manchuria then, and then that's what they wanted to do, and that continued, and they thought there was going to be civil war. So the end of January, I think it was in '37, that would be '37, yeah. We all piled onto buses there and headed out of Xi'an. Most of the foreigners there that wanted to leave to get out of there because they thought it was going to be civil war. So
Just getting too hot.
yeah, too hot. So then
So you were about 17 by this time, right?
I was 16. Then.
16, and
yeah.
So you were old enough to know that history was being made
Oh
here.
yeah. And of course, by that time, Pearl and Joan hadn't been able to go back to school because of the conditions there. So then we, like I said, we piled into these buses there, and they took us about 80 miles east there. Why they didn't let us get on the train there at Xi'an, I don't know, but so we got on the train and we went to Shanghai again, this time. And they were down there for 2-3 months, and then my parents, they went back, and then Pearl and Joan were able to go to Chefoo to the school, and I stayed there. I went to some business school down there for a couple of months.
In Shanghai. In 1937.
37.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so then Pearl and Joan went back to Chefoo.
Right.
Okay. I seem to recall seeing a photograph of your home in Guyan or Xi'an, I'm not sure, that had a big American flag on the roof. Do you recall a picture like that?
Well, the only one I remember, there was a train when I left in 1938. We had on the train there. We had a big American flag.
Where was it on the train? On the roof?
On the roof.
Why was it there?
Hoping that the Japanese planes, if they saw us, they wouldn't bomb us. But it shouldn't make any difference to them anyway.
So you don't have any recollection of a house in China with an American flag?
That.
Okay.
Possible, but I don't recall it though.
Okay. So you made the whole family made their way to Shanghai, and Pearl and Joan went to Chefoo. You went to a business school in Shanghai for a couple months.
Yeah.
And your parents stayed there with you, or
no? They went back earlier.
They went
as soon as it was okay.
It was
to go
cool
back.
to go back. Okay.
Yeah.
And at this point, what was your intentions then?
Well, I'm still waiting for my parents to take me home to the States. They were supposed to go home. Well, they returned to China in 1928, and here it used to be 7 years, and that would have been 1935. In 1936, they still couldn't get away. I don't know if it was because their relief wasn't there or whatever.
So they had at least a 7 or 8 year stint there then.
Yeah, longer than normal. So 1937 would have been 9 years. 1937, 9 years. 1938 was, they finally decided to send me home with some other people. So it was 10 years they were still there. But by that time the war had started. The war between China and Japan had started. That started in July of 37, I think it was. So ordinarily we would, go to Shanghai and get a ship to go to the States or Canada, and we couldn't get through there because of the war. It was impossible to get through the front lines there. So we had to go all the way to Canton and Hong Kong in South China by train, and then from there by ship up to Shanghai. And that's when we got the ship to go to, this particular time.
So, sorry, you're saying that you went from, I thought you went from Shanghai down to...
No, we took the train from Xi'an to central China, Wuhan, what used to be called Hankou.
But I thought you were in Shanghai going to a business school, though.
Oh, no, I'd already gone back to Xi'an by that time.
Okay.
Okay. I got ahead of myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so you made your way down to the Hong Kong area from Xi'an.
Well, yeah, a whole bunch of people that were on that train. But on that train now, they had an American flag. That's the one there. That was a train to the main line, north-south line to Wuhan. And there was an American consulate there. Wuhan is about 600 miles up the Yangtze River. And they had an American consulate there, and I got my passport there. And then from there, we couldn't, get down to, that still hadn't been conquered by the Japanese, that area. Then from there, we went all the way down South China to Canton and Hong Kong. And then by ship from Hong Kong up to Shanghai to get a ship to North America.
Okay, so
that was in 1938.
1938.